Now, we are way ahead of most countries in the world. That's according to Vice President Dr. Bawumia as he jumps to the defense of the new Patriotic Party administration and the interventions of President Akufo-Addo's government targeted at improving Ghana's economy. Ghana is experiencing its slowest growth since 1975, a situation that is mounting pressure on government to redeem its pledge of transforming the lives of the citizenry. Well, delivering his address at the Millennium City here in the Greater Accra region, the Vice President outlined a raft of measures some moments ago that he believes will turn around the situation of the Ghanaian economy.
The trade balance recorded a surplus for 5 successive years, for the first time in over 30 years. We recorded surplus for 5 successive years. The trade balance was in deficit between 2013 and 2016, but moved from a deficit of 1.7 billion in 2016 to a surplus of 1.1 billion in 2017, a larger surplus of 1.8 billion in 2018, and an even larger surplus of 2.2 billion by 2019. The impact of COVID-19 has seen a reduction in the surplus to 2.04 billion in 2020 and a further reduction to 1.1 billion in 2021. Nevertheless, this is still a much stronger performance than the trade deficit of 1.7 billion recorded in 2016, which, ladies and gentlemen, the positive trade balances resulted in a narrowing of the current account deficit as a percentage of GDP between 2017 and 2019, but a subsequent widening of the deficit in 2020 and 2021 as a result widening of the deficit in 2020 and 2021 as a result of COVID-19. Even that notwithstanding COVID-19, our current account position between 2017 and 2021 is much stronger than that between 2013 and 2016. Improvements in the current account performance and increased capital inflows have helped to boost Ghana's international reserves. The data shows that gross international reserves increased from 6.1 billion in 2016 to 8.4 billion 4 months of import cover by 2019, and subsequently to 9.6 billion 4.4 months of import cover at the end of 2021. By February 2022, the gross international reserves had decreased marginally to 9.5 billion for 4.3 months of import cover. So in terms of gross international reserves, our economic situation is still much stronger than what it was in the 2016 period. Now we come to the fiscal balance.
Well, there are a number of reactions that are greeting the Vice President's announcement. Earlier today, I had a conversation with former Deputy Finance Minister Fifi Fiavi-Kwete, who is of the view that the new Patriotic Party's management of the economy is a poor one.
You know, the sad part is not the fact that the economy goes through difficulties. Every economy now and again goes through some difficulty. The sad part is that when you have in the leadership of a country, let's just say the group that simply is not candid enough to accept what the truth is. You saw, for example, that when we had difficulties between the period, let's say 2013, 2014, President Mahama was very honest about the difficulties. We didn't seek to shift the blame. When, for example, we had to confront the energy crisis, we did not shift the blame, even though that crisis was not our making. but we did not shift it. We met it and try hard and fix it. But we are dealing with a group that is pretending as if Ghana is an island. I mean, Ghana is surrounded by so many countries, and all those countries never experienced the levels of what you call the collapse that Ghana saw as a result of, in the year 2020. I mean, growth in Cote d'Ivoire, growth in Togo, growth in Benin, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, never was at the level that our growth was. Now, so to simply use COVID as an excuse, simply showing that you are not showing even the level of honesty, the level of conduct that is needed. And that is the number one trait that is needed for a leader.
But Fifi, many would challenge you on that claim, particularly when the argument is that and when I say you, the NDC did not take off on a clean slate. You had a pretty bad record when you were exiting office, and the New Patriotic Party at least made some significant gains, and now we are recording a slump in the economy. So it's not as though it was a clean slate when the president took off.
But that itself is another big lie, because if you will recall, in 2016, the cedi depreciated by less than 9%. Okay, we are talking about a group that today, with all the massive oil revenues that they are getting, still have the cedi depreciating at 15%. In 2016, it is true that GDP was not very high, but every single person who was following the Ghanaian economy knew that work had already been done that was going to ensure that GDP was going to grow at a minimum of 8% in 2017, which was known not just in Ghana, but actually was known all over the world. The World Bank, IMF, the investors, the credit rating agencies, all of them knew that Ghana's economy, work had been done to ensure that growth was going to be a minimum of 8% in 2017. A massive talk of investment, it was handed over to the government that was in place. So you should not just limit it to what GDP was in 2016. You should be looking at the amount of work that was done to ensure that the growth in 2017 was going to rebound and reach a very high level. But of course, there again, I talk about the lack of conduct and the lack of honesty.
Well, so that's Fifi Kweti's position there, which resonates with what the majority members of the NDC think about the economy. But there's a need for us to also get the reactions live on ground and get you what some patrons and those who are attending the event today, when the Vice President delivered the address, and what their impression is about today's event. Parker Wilson, my colleague, has been interacting with some persons on the at the event grounds. He joins us with more. Parker, what more can you report from where you are?
That the government has been able to manage the economy so well in spite of the shocks by the COVID-19 pandemic and also the Russia-Ukraine war. The Vice President has been making the point that there are a number of factors, and he agrees that our fiscal debt has gone up, and as a matter of fact, he agrees to that proposition. But he believes that there are a number of things that accounted for it. They had to borrow to fix some bridges, to construct the Pokwase interchange, among others. Again, some universities as well. And even in the midst of COVID-19, the government employed a number of nurses across the country. One of the things that he said was that this government has been very sensitive towards the plight of the ordinary Ghanaian, basically because during the COVID-19 pandemic, they managed to provide free water, free electricity, and also free food for the ordinary Ghanaian. And so it is not misleading for anyone to say that this government is not sensitive to the plight of the ordinary Ghanaian. And that has been his position. And he says that the economy is very resilient, is very strong, and this government will continue to ensure that they do what is right to better the lives of the ordinary Ghanaian. He admitted clearly that times are hard, we are going through a number of challenges, we are in economic crisis, but the government is still doing something to help improve the situation. I will be speaking to some of the members here. I see the former member of parliament here, Ben Abdallah. He used to be the chairman of the Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee. Ben Abdallah is here. Honorable, let me engage you briefly. The Vice President has been speaking. For you, what has been your takeaway, sir?
My takeaway has been good. He has been very impressive, as usual. At first, I believe a lot of people didn't know the economic fundamentals that we have at the moment. But with this lecture, which has been very impressive, which has been very educative, which has been very informative, a lot of people now have become abreast with the economic fundamentals that the Vice President has just spoken about. So you realize that in all the economic history of this country, at any point in time that you have MPP in power, MPP does far better than the NDC.
The argument has been that, I mean, the economy has already taken a nosedive before the COVID-19 pandemic and then Russia-Ukraine war. And so it cannot be accurate to largely blame COVID-19 and the Russian-Ukraine war on the crisis we are currently facing.
If you had studied the performance of MPP from 2017 to 2020, you will have realized that MPP was doing fundamentally well in so far as all the economic indices or indicators are concerned. The economy decided to have a little nosedive when COVID-19 hit. COVID-19, the ripple effect of COVID-19 is global. It's not only restricted to Ghana. Everybody across the world is crying. The pictures that the Vice President showed go to show, I mean exactly or precisely that even in the United States of America, which is considered as one of the industrialized and developed nations, is suffering. UK is suffering. France is suffering. And the suffering has been exacerbated by the Russian-Ukraine war. And this is a notorious fact that every well-meaning person ought to take note of. It is only those who have decided not to take judicial notice of what is happening across the globe that.
Well, Supaka Wilson there getting reactions on that. We'll bring you updates in our subsequent reports. But it's time now to also assess what it is that the Vice President has been talking about. Joining us now is economist and Dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School, Professor John Gachi. Thanks, sir, for your time. So you've heard the Vice President. He says when estimating the achievements of this government, do you have figures that back this or prove otherwise?
Well, I think it's the job of the government to provide figures, and then we interrogate the figures. But you can see clearly that this lecture has a particular purpose. It has two purposes. One, you will recall that respected international institutions, such as the World Bank, openly indicated that we cannot blame all our economic difficulties on COVID-19, that we were suffering this economic distress before COVID-19. And I believe that didn't go well with the government. It has some hanging effect on the government and other people within the country, people who are respected, are saying the same thing. So I think government is working very hard to ensure that they stick to their statement that it is the COVID-19 that has actually destroyed everything.
And in fact, just on the statement you're making, the Vice President talks about that. He says the concern is not about the COVID. The focus has got to do with the government that is managing the economy at the time Ghana is faced with this economic crisis. He believes that they have a superior team, a superior plan that can take us out of this.
Well, I think Ghanaians don't see it that way. This lecture, Ghanaians were expecting that the lecture will inspire them, give them the hope to actually hope that the escalation of price hike in the country, there is some clear solution to this thing. But the vice president only mentioned those things without providing what they are really doing to bring down food prices, to bring down, those items that he has mentioned. He only concluded by saying that it is happening in other countries. It's as if it's happening in other countries, therefore keep quiet. And I believe that is very unfortunate. A great opportunity missed. And of course, we can also say that some of the things that the vice president say are not accurate. You know that we enacted the Fiscal Responsibility Act in 2018, pegging the deficit at 5%. But you know that in 2019, the actual deficit of Ghana was 7.5 and primary balance was negative 1.8. These are very clear reports that the government itself provided to IMF. Therefore, it is very clear that prudent financial management of the country was missing. In 2018-2019, that resulted in breaching the Fiscal Responsibility Act just within 1 year. And those issues are very significant to discuss.
Sorry, it's unfortunate we don't have much time, but just to take your thoughts on this, some say that the signs were clear. In fact, under the erstwhile administration, we had crossed the debt distress point, which the IMF says we've crossed the 70% threshold. So if that's the case in terms of how distressed we were in the past, it goes without saying that we couldn't have sustained that trajectory with the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Your takes on that? Your take on that?
The Fiscal Responsibility Act has a provision that says that when you are in a period of pandemic, then you suspend those rules. But what I'm saying is that we breached that rule by 2.5 percentage points within 1 year before COVID-19. So which means that we are on a path of destruction long before COVID-19. And I mentioned two important fiscal indicators. The primary balance was negative in 2019 before we entered 2020 when COVID-19 started in March thereabout. So it's clearly we cannot blame all the difficulties on COVID-19. It is also attributed to poor financial management, not adhering to fiscal rules that we have actually covered for ourselves. That is why, and we need to embrace that and resolve the problems. As we speak right now, Ghanaians are expecting that the fundamentals as have been described, price stability as the fundamental of the economy, broken into three parts: price, interest rate stability, exchange rate stability, and inflation. All have indicated that fundamentals is weak, and we know the causes of some of these weaknesses in the fundamentals. We know why prices of food items are going up. We know why we have agriculture policy. Those agriculture policies that we put in place are not actually resonating well in economic management. And we need to accept that and begin to rework on our agricultural policy. Why should we be importing most of those items? And because there is depreciation and some problems somewhere in the world, we are not able to produce some of the items ourselves. That is what Ghanaians want to hear. And that is missing completely in his lecture. So the lecture did not focus on providing solution, but trying to defend the government that it is because of COVID and it is because of Russia, Ukraine, which I do not think that Ghanaians buy into.
All right, then. I'm grateful, Professor John Gachi, for spending some time with us. Let's stay on the economy because